anything, and he loved his guys and would do anything for his guys. And so when he died, we're at his it's not his funeral, it's before the funeral, it's like the open casket thing, the wake thing. And myself, his brother Alex, um, Leif Babin, who I wrote Extreme Ownership with, and JP Donnell, who's one of my brothers who works with us at Echelon Front now, is with us in Ramadi and was very close to Seth, and we're like everyone kind of cleared out for us, and we go in there, and I think JP JP had one of those memorial bracelets with guys' names on it that had died, and JP gave that to him, and I think Leif gave him some surf wax because also Seth was a surfer, and and I gave Seth his black belt because he started training jiu-jitsu with me, and he had his purple belt. He'd gotten his purple belt. I gave him his black belt, and everyone was just quiet. And JP was telling this story the other day, um, and I just said, we will not fail him. Meaning that him, Mark, Mikey, Chris, Seth, and countless other guys, they're not here. They don't have the opportunity to do the things we do. They don't have the opportunity to get up in the morning. So that's what it is, man. I won't fail those guys.
Thanks for sharing that. Um, yeah, I think anyone listening to this feels what I feel right now, which is it's very clear that the depth of emotion for people that we care about and lose has everything to do with our love for them. There's just no question about it, right? That grief and love are so intimately tied. They are a direct reflection of one another. And I hesitate to kind of stay on hard themes, but I think it's really important for a couple of reasons. Last time we spoke, it was in your office and your podcast. And after we wrapped up, we started talking about some people we know and some things that had happened in your community, and kind of spooled into some discussions about things that happened in nearby communities and civilian culture. And, one of the things that's so perplexing, I think, to people, including me, but maybe with time less so, and this actually came up last night in a discussion at home because of some recent events, not close to me, but which is that, some people go through things where there's loss. They go through life and there's hardship. I think most people experience some hardship, certainly some more than others. And every once in a while, and far too often, and even in the SEAL team community, and even in the various communities within the SEAL team community where one would never expect it, right? These are highly trained, tight community, hard guys, right? That's the language we sometimes hear. But as you pointed out, these are people often that have tremendous emotional depth. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I think we sometimes think of as emotion as weakness, but there was a time not long ago, 40, 50 years ago, where emotions like jealousy and intensity, think the character Sonny in The Godfather, like he would get so pissed, he would fire his own fist, right? That's a pretty emotional response, where intensity and emotion were kind of interchangeable words, right? At some level. I'm going to be direct. There have been a lot of guys that come out of the SEAL teams I've been surprised to hear that kill themselves. And yesterday there was a major suicide. I didn't know this guy, and we actually followed each other on social media, but I admittedly was not close to him, didn't know him at all. In fact, his name was Twitch or something. I mean, he was a public facing figure. But listen, happens all too often, and it even happens in former operators. And suicide's something that fascinates me and intrigues me and scares the hell out of me, because for the life of me, I cannot map it to any specific thing in the brain or body that we're aware of. And yeah, I've had several friends commit suicide, had my undergrad advisor commit suicide. The point is not them or their story. The point is, what in the world dictates whether or not somebody who has a community, who's doing well and then less well, decides to off themselves to end their own life versus, decide I'm going to keep going. I mean, I'm raising this as a question. I wish I had an answer. I used to have ideas like, oh, it's time perception, where these people are feeling so miserable that they feel it's going to go on forever. But then you start reading the literature on suicide, and I've started to go into this. For those of you that can stomach it, and I don't know that I want to recommend this movie, but I'm just going to say it exists. The movie The Bridge, where they fixed the camera on the Golden Gate Bridge for a year. It turns out one person a day on average tries to jump off. We talked to a guy who survived it. By the way, he jumped off. The moment he went off there, he thought, I wish I hadn't done that. He survived. This kid with bipolar disorder, especially in males, 20 to 30 times higher incidence of suicide. Massive, increase. The point is that there's something that happens in the brain where somehow people also will get the idea, and you hear this, that this is like something they're excited to do, or that they're going to right the world somehow by doing this, or that somehow it's like a gift to themselves. Again, I'm not encouraging anybody to do this. I want to be very clear, but these are the things that you hear. And sadly, your community has lost a number of people through suicide. And yet there are a lot of guys that thrive. And so, more as a template for trying to understand mental health and depression and suicide, what are your thoughts on why some people seem to thrive and some people just go all the way down?
Clearly, that's a very complex question, and there's probably a lot of different answers. And I certainly am not one to be able to answer that question. However, probably where my thought has gone on this lately, because I've known some guys that have killed themselves, and I've been totally shocked, and just been completely and totally shocked that guys that I knew killed themselves. Guys that you would think, oh, this guy would never do this in a million years. And that's the feeling I've had about a lot of the guys that I know that have killed themselves. I had a woman on my podcast named Sarah Wilkinson, and she's an awesome woman, and she was married to a SEAL. His name was Chad. I didn't know him. He killed himself. And to hear her describe the story, the shocking thing about the story is that the guy that she knew, the guy that she married, was not the same guy that killed himself. Something happened to him that made him a different person. And look, they're getting all this information now about CTE and the brain trauma that you go through, and people are exposed to that. And I think, if you've ever seen, George Foreman, he seems totally normal and good to go, right? And Muhammad Ali, not so much. And I've known fighters, and you can look at any number of boxers that have had a career, and some of them are fine, and some of them have some real significant, pugilistic, there's a pugilistic syndrome, right? They've been punched too much and they have problems. So different people, you can expose different people to blast impact, and it's going to have a different impact over time. And I think that, again, to hear Sarah explain that story, and what she saw from her husband and how different he was when they got married compared to where they ended up is totally different. A totally different person. I had another